A federal trade court has blocked most of President Trump's trade tariffs. A three-judge panel on the International Court of Trade yesterday ruled that the president did not have the authority to impose the sweeping tariffs. The judges found that Trump's use of the decades-old International Emergency Economic Powers Act did not, quote, delegate an unbounded tariff authority to the president, and that Trump's tariffs lacked, quote, any identifiable limits. Lawyers for the Trump administration have already said that they will appeal. A little more background on the Court of International Trade. It was established under Article 3 of the Constitution. According to its government website, the court has nationwide jurisdiction over civil actions arising out of the customs and international trade laws of the United States. Now, stock futures rose sharply in response.
Wall Street obviously liked this.
Yeah,
right?
To the ruling, with the Dow gaining more than 500 points, while the tech-heavy NASDAQ added over 400 points. So, Willie, an interesting reaction to this ruling.
Yeah, Wall Street does not like tariffs, so they like this ruling. Let's bring in the co-host of our fourth hour, contributing writer at The Atlantic, Jonathan Lemire, and columnist and associate editor for The Washington Post, David Ignatius. Guys, good morning. John, I think people perhaps last night or this morning just learned that there is a U.S. Court of International Trade and what jurisdiction it has, but saying very clearly these tariffs as imposed through executive orders are both invalid and contrary to law. The White House, we can expect now to push back hard.
Yeah, we're learning about two new things. This court, but also the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which is what Donald Trump and the Trump administration cited to impose these tariffs in the first place. A 1977 law that suggests that a national emergency gives the president certain powers over the economy. What the White House did was put forth the argument that these trade deficits counted as a national emergency, or the flow of fentanyl over the borders. Various justifications. The court yesterday made it clear that's not the case, that this was something the president had overstepped his bounds. The tariffs should purview of Congress, and they were cut out of this process entirely. And that though the president is permitted to continue some tariffs on specific items like steel and cars and the like, but he cannot do these broad-based national tariffs that we've seen against China, Mexico, and the like. Now, let's be clear, a lot of these trade deals haven't been finished yet, so it's unclear how this is going to upend those negotiations. The Trump administration reacted with nothing short of fury last night. Stephen Miller tweeted, "The judicial coup is out of control." I have several messages here from Trump administration officials saying things along those lines, suggesting this is another plot by the deep state to stop this president. One here, they'll stop at nothing to blunt his agenda and the like. They think this is the courts, along with the bureaucracy, trying to undermine what is his signature economic agenda.
Well, Joe, the deep state in this case is a three-judge panel, this International Court of Trade, composed of a Reagan appointee, an Obama appointee, and a Trump appointee.
I'm not really good at math, but this appears to be a court that has 2/3 of its members that ruled on this being Republican appointed, and one of those being a Donald Trump appointee. David Ignatius, all this talk about the deep state, all this talk about a judicial coup is, again, of course it's reckless, but also it just flies in the face of history. Barack Obama faced this. Joe Biden faced this. Of course, Donald Trump faced it. Donald Trump's facing it more than others because Donald Trump deliberately is pushing the boundaries of Article 2 powers, which is perfectly fine and legitimate to test those boundaries. But don't be shocked when you step over the line and the court pulls you back. And I want to circle back to this use of emergency powers, just so people understand what's going on here. Donald Trump did that, I think, in the first term. I believe it was to build the wall. It got snapped back by the courts there because it wasn't an emergency. And he's declared two different emergencies now that really, if you just look historically, don't line up with the definition of emergencies as compared to the statute. So when the White House officials are saying the sort of things that they're saying, first of all, they're ignoring the clear letter of the law, number one. And number two, they're just ignoring history. Ask Joe Biden about student loan forgiveness. The Supreme Court brushed aside his executive order. He had to figure out a way to get a lot less than he wanted. That's, as Earth, Wind, and Fire would sing, that's the way of the world. If you're in Washington, D.C., it happens to every president. And so I hope they'll tone down the really reckless rhetoric towards these judges who are simply reading the law, reading the Constitution, and a lot of Trump-appointed judges going, okay, no, that's just not what the law says.
So governing by emergency orders is what dictatorships do. That they live in a permanent state of emergency, which basically gives the executive carte blanche to make changes. Donald Trump's hardly the first president to be frustrated by the courts. Remember Franklin Roosevelt, as he was trying to enact his sweeping New Deal legislation, got so furious at the Supreme Court he wanted to expand the numbers so he'd have a majority he could count on to get legal permission to do all the things he wanted. Thank goodness he was stopped in that. I do think, looking at this trade issue, I would have thought that a president did have pretty wide powers to tariff, and the constraint on that power has been the financial markets. It's the reaction of the stock and bond markets that turned Donald Trump around, not court action. He'd already decided to pull back from his 145% tariff on China. He pulled back from his tariffs on the EU, not because some judge told him to, but because the financial markets said, thou shalt not. This is unwise economic action. So we'll see how this works out. In the broader sense, Joe and Mika, we have a big Supreme Court case coming that will test what are the executive powers of the president. How are they limited? What among the many things Trump has done is legal and what is not? And that case is ahead of us. It's hard to know how this court will rule, but I'd be surprised if they embraced the idea of this sort of extraordinary, universal, wield a chainsaw executive power that Trump, Musk, others in this MAGA group have tried to claim.
Help me! Thanks. Resources here.